Hi, I'm Aidan with the Gwinnett County Public Library. Today I'm going to be talking about the US Census and how this can be used to help you with your genealogical research projects. We're going to start by talking about what the census is, the information it collects, and which censuses are available. We're then going to talk about how you can use this data in your research and how you can access it using library databases. Finally, I'm going to finish by letting you know how you can book time with a librarian to help you with your research. So let's get started by asking, what is the US Census? Article 1, Section 2 of the US Constitution sets out a requirement that an enumeration of the people who are living in each of the states be carried out every 10 years. The first US Census took place in 1790, and one has taken place every subsequent decade. Title 13 of the US Code established the Bureau of the Census as part of the US Commerce Department. One of the requirements of the code is that the information collected would be confidential for a period of 72 years. Now, if you're wondering why we're making this video today, it's because the 72-year period of limitations ends this month for the data that was collected in the 1950 census. In other words, soon there's going to be a huge amount of new data available for you to look at and to learn from. Information was collected household by household, and in this period it would have been collected by a US Census official who would go from home to conduct interviews. Now, we're going to come back to why that's important later in this video. Questions asked in the 1950 census were used, for example, to predict the demand that would be made on public utilities and public schools over the following decade. What this means for genealogical research is that the type of information available differs from census year to census year. Information about a person's place of birth, for example, was first recorded in the 1850 census. By 1890, the census began to ask when someone had first arrived in the United States. So, keeping in mind that the data collected will change by census year, how can you use this information in your research? Generally speaking, when we do genealogical research, we work backwards. We begin with a person, establish their parents, then their parents' parents, and so on. You may have a pretty good idea about some of those people's date of birth and death from personal knowledge or from carrying out family interviews. But as you go further back, you will eventually begin to learn ancestors' names from the birth records of their children. This is great for helping you work out what an ancestor was called, but at this point it's just a name. You can use the census, though, to help you work out who their parents really were. Let's take a look at an actual example. Birth records show that Marion Morrison is the child of Clyde L. Morrison and Mary A. Brown. Now, we know that this person was born in 1907, so we ought to be able to find them on the 1910 census. If we can find them, then we should also find their parents and get a sense of the years in which those people were born. Why is it only a sense? Well, the census doesn't ask for people's date of birth, but rather their age. Using this, we learn that Clyde was 25 in 1910, so that we can estimate that he was born round about 1885. Now, let's take a moment to talk about the reliability of census information in general. By federal law, people are required to truthfully answer census questions. But remember how the census tended to be recorded by a person going from house to house? Well, the information collected was reported to that person by someone else within the household. That person may have known their own age well, and perhaps that of their own children, but if they had lodgers, servants, or extended family living with them, that information may be much less reliable. What I do is look at this information as being advisory. It can help us to narrow down our research. I can now look for Clyde Morrison and Mary Brown, and I will have a rough sense of their birth year. I might even learn their place of birth, how long they've been married, or if they're likely to have immigration paperwork we might find in Ancestry. But remember, any information we find on the census record will need to be verified in another source. Remember that data is most reliable when it is recorded close to the event actually occurring. For instance, a date of birth will be more accurately recorded on a birth certificate than on that person's death certificate. There are a couple of other ways we can use the information in the census. One would be to help verify that we're looking at the right person. Let's say that when we search for Clyde Morrison, we find multiple results for their birth certificate. If we know their place of birth, or the names of their parents if they lived with them when they got older, We can use that to help us confirm we're looking at the right person. We can also use it to build an understanding of a person's siblings. Now, generally in genealogical research, this is regarded as unnecessary information. But sometimes we hit brick walls in our research. It may be that when we look sideways at a sibling's records, we may suddenly have a better idea about who their parents were. The other thing that I really love about looking at census records is that they give us an idea about who our ancestors actually were. What level of education did they receive? What did they do as a job? It's this sort of detail that takes someone from being just a name on a document and fleshes out our understanding of who they actually were. So how do you access that US Census data? Well, the library provides access to a couple of databases that have scanned and indexed records from the census. These are Heritage Quest and Ancestry Library Edition. Heritage Quest can be accessed from anywhere you have an internet connection. You start by visiting www.gwinnettpl.org. Then click on Learn and Explore, and then Adult Digital Resources. If you are not on a library computer or connected to our Wi-Fi, you will need to sign in using the Galileo password. To find the current password, scroll down until you find the Galileo icon. When you click on it, you will see a link to click to get the current password. You will just need to enter your library card number and your PIN to see what it is. Then return to the list of resources and scroll down to select Heritage Quest. Ancestry Library Edition can only be accessed when either on a library computer or connected to the Wi-Fi at one of our locations. You can find it on that same digital resources page. Ancestry Library Edition offers access to a much wider selection of records from all over the world, and it's great for more in-depth research. Both databases are easy to use and offer the same functionality in relation to this census data. If this is your first time using them, let me point out a few functions of both that may make them easier to use. The first thing I'm going to point out is this icon to the right of the page number that you'll see when you're looking at a census record. You'll be able to click on this to see how the data in the record has been transcribed by a volunteer or employee. When you click on this spanner icon, you'll be able to see an expandable settings menu. On later censuses, you'll be able to toggle on highlighting by household, where a family unit are highlighted together, text tips, where when you hover over a word with a mouse pointer, it will display the information in a text box like this. Name and column labels will display when you're zoomed in, helping you to remember what the data you're seeing on the screen relates to. If you struggle to read the handwriting on these records, I also recommend being familiar with the Invert Colors tool. This is great, particularly on documents when text bleeds through or the paper shows signs of aging, as it can help you distinguish between a pen stroke and the texture of the paper itself. So, what happens when you get stuck, or if you need a little more help getting started with these databases? Well, you can book a librarian. This is a service where you can ask for an appointment with a library staff member, either virtually or in person. To book a librarian, visit our website at www.gwinnettpl.org. When you hover over the Find It button, you will see Book a Librarian under Library Services. Try to provide a little information about the type of help that you need, so that you'll be matched with a staff member best able to help you achieve your goals. Thank you for joining me for today's session. I hope that I have given you a few ideas for how you can use data from the US Census to support your family history research. Thank you.